What's up, guys? Ivan here with getivan.com, and in today's video we're going to be talking about proxies for Scrapebox. So I've talked about this in some other videos and given some recommendations, and I finally decided to make this dedicated short video on the topic. So there are obviously a lot of proxy options. So if we go to buy proxies in Google, see all kinds of services. Here's buyproxies.org, WebShare.io, proxy6.net, proxyrack.com, Illuminati. I almost said Illuminati. Highproxies.com, SmartProxy.com, and so on and so forth. Now, I had my heyday in proxy testing back in 2017, so it's been a while. There's probably some new players on the block. I tested several other services that I'm not going to be discussing in today's video. So I'm going to discuss a few that I appreciate that do work pretty well, and then I'm going to discuss just briefly touch on a couple that seem to be more popular that I don't really recommend. So first service is ChangeMyIP.com. I used this service for quite a while, probably 2 or 3 years, and there's nothing fancy about these guys. Their back-end UI is one thing I really appreciate about them. When I unsubscribed from them, they did send me an email and ask me, why I unsubscribed, and that's basically what I told them, that, their back-end UI was great, but then just the quantity, you can't get a very large quantity, even though the proxies are high quality. So when we pump this up to about 20, you can see it'll cost like $15 for 20 shared proxies, which is fine. And it's crazy how much I was able to do with just 15 shared ChangeMyIP proxies, because even though they're shared between like 3 people. So they're kind of like semi-private, they're shared, but they're not shared with the planet. You know what I mean? And I don't want to log in right now, but you can select locations really, really easily for shared proxies, for dedicated proxies. So if I was going to use private proxies, this would be the dedicated proxies, I would probably go back to ChangeMyIP. You can find a lot. Actually, the first proxy service I ever used was my private proxy, because a while back, I believe Scrapebox used to recommend this service. I don't know if they still recommend it nowadays, but and this is probably good for private proxies, but again, the problem is that you just don't get that many proxies for how much money you're paying. And with Scrapebox, you need proxies that have a lot of threads. So a proxy is obviously an independent IP, right? And then the thread is the number of connections that you can make to your proxy pool. So sometimes frequently you'll encounter services that give you a pool of proxies, but then there's only a certain number of threads. Like you might buy 100 proxies from a service, but then they say you only have 15 threads. That means you can only access 15 proxies in that pool of 100 proxies at one time, but there are better options. So anyways, let's move on here. This is a service I used for a little bit, ProxyRotator. This is still, to this day, the best rotating proxy service I've yet to come across. You can see they've got 83 million proxies in their database, and they're pretty cost effective. But the number of threads they advertise is not accurate. So this one says 100 threads for $55 or $45 a month. That's not true, because they have all these different layers of locations. And so depending on the location you're looking at and the quality of the network, you're going to get a lot fewer threads than they advertise from the general pool. What they're advertising here is their general pool. And in my experience, the general pool doesn't work with Scrapebox. So you have to use their premium pools, and their USA premium pool at 100 threads only gives you about 10 threads. And then this is another problem for however many threads you put into Scrapebox from ProxyRotator, cut it in half. That's how many threads you really get to use. And this is what soured my relationship with this company. If I had 10 threads in the USA premium pool, and I tried to use 10 threads in Scrapebox, then it would trigger errors because you only get half the number of threads that they tell you get. And then every time you get a certain percentage of errors, the company will contact you and complain. And then in some cases, they will freeze your proxies, your proxy usage. And in the last time that I used them, I think I've paid for like maybe 3 or 4 months with them. And the last time that I used them, I complained about it and they cut off my use. And then I had like another half a month that just never got to be used. They basically just stole money from me, because they locked the account from me using it because of the errors, and they wouldn't accept. This is one of those companies that says, no, everything we do is perfect. We've never made a single thing that doesn't work properly, even though the rest of the software kingdom is working just fine or has standards. This is one of those companies where if you can get it to work within their narrow band of things working, it's awesome. Like the speed of these proxies and the USA Premium is awesome. The level of success is like 100%, but they don't handle errors properly. Their customer service is rude and disrespectful. So I avoid using them at all costs, but I do have to give them credit. It does work if you know exactly how to use it. So this is another service. Now let's come to my currently number one suggestion. This may change in the future. And that's WebShare. And I was turned on to this service recently by a YouTube subscriber. And when I saw this service at the prices, I was like, this has got to be bogus. Because, it says right here, 1 penny per proxy. And then even at private proxies, it's 20 cents ish per proxy. It's a little bit unbelievable. And then as you accumulate different features, then it gets more expensive. But I have tested these proxies. I've been using these for maybe a month now or something. I think I've been using these for 2 months now, and they absolutely work. I'm paying like close to $50 a month for 500 proxies, and they're shared proxies. But what's really cool is you can get up to 500 threads. So you can just have them, being used at all times. The speed is really good. The success rate is really good. They don't work very well on Google, but they work perfectly on everything else. And most of what I scrape is on everything else anyway. So you can make any set of proxies rotating, it's not set of proxies. You can make your plan rotate the proxies that you pay for depending on what kind of proxies they are, which is really unique. I never saw another service do that, but it's much more expensive. So don't be deceived. This is not a service just for private proxies. They are just for shared proxies, just for the cheap, super cheap stuff. You can use it for this other stuff too. I'm not sure how good these are by comparison. They have private and dedicated, and that's a little bit deceptive. Usually those are interchangeable terms, but so that would have to be something to look into. But I will say this is my number one recommended service. I do include a link of mine below this video in the description for this service, an affiliate link. I do appreciate you using that if possible, but if not, no worries. Let's talk about some other services that are popular that people like to talk about. StormProxy being one of them. So I did test this service back in 2017 or so, maybe 2018, not sure. And I was really surprised at how much how slow they were and how much failure there was. And I tested it was probably the dedicated rotating proxies, because I don't have any use for private proxies. The only reason that you would need to use private proxies with Scrapebox is if maybe something to do with social media scraping, perhaps, or certainly it could be more successful with Google scraping. But in those cases where you're scraping from services that have more strict systems in place to protect against your scraping activity, you want to look for a rotator. So there's not much of a reason to just use dedicated or private. You need to do something that has per query rotation. And again, this would be the best service. This service that I have, that I kind of gave you a mixed review on. Anyways, let's move on. So another big service that you'll see in searches, and they have a really high quality UI and backend, is Illuminati. The problem with Illuminati, when I went in there and took a look at the backend, and all their offerings, is the price. It's just very, very expensive for how much data and all the various things that are involved. Now, there's so many different facets to this service that it could be that there's maybe a very specific and special kind of combination that allows you to get the price down and maybe use it, but you know, in a more ideal manner. But to me, this is kind of one of those things that's designed to be incorporated. You incorporate the API into your software as a service, and you use it for some sort of specialty purpose or whatever. Apparently they have unlimited concurrent connections, so you could technically like tap into this gigantic pool of their IPs and just go to town. But again, the problem is the price. It's super expensive. Here, let me see if I can show you the rotating residential proxies. $3 a gig. Where was that? Rotating. See, $500 a month at the starter package. Residential at $12 a gig. Or is this one? Is this it over here? Maybe. Golly, 30 grand a month. So I guess these are minimum purchase orders in order to qualify for these various, plans. Like this right here is nothing. With WebShare right now, I'm scraping something like 15 terabytes per month. And you might think that's excessive, but it's because I'm actually selling the data. It's a part of my business. It's a part of some of the stuff I'm doing on Fiverr, for services and things like that. So, yeah, pricing per gig is just really dumb to me because you're going to hit that limit super fast with Scrapebox. You need something that's going to give you, a large number of IPs. Shared IPs are fine, or proxies, and then you need something with a lot of connections so that you can get your data really quickly. Right now, whenever I do harvesting, whenever I do harvesting, I oftentimes will just do Bing in this main area. And then when it comes to independent sites, you can do your own footprint in the grab check custom data grabber. And most sites don't have those kinds of protections. So that's why in Scrapebox, you want to go over to your connections and you want to jack everything up to, a high level of connections, a large pool of proxies, and then you're going to be able to do things a lot quicker. And the level of success is determined on the network. So anyways, lots and lots of ranting. Right, my recommendation right now is WebShare. That may change in the future, so check out my channel and do a search on proxies. And if you find something with a later timestamp, then go with that. But yeah, check the description below for the link to this service. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you sooner or later. Thanks. Bye-bye.